This story is inspired by real experiences. Names, places, and details have been changed to protect privacy. At Children Who Changed How We Live, we believe that the deepest transformations often begin in silence, in hospital rooms, in whispered words, in the quiet courage of ordinary families who refuse to let go. This is not a story about miracles. It's about what happens after the sirens fade when the world moves on, but one girl's journey has only just begun. Listen gently. It was warm, not summer warm, not sweltering, but that sudden April warmth that feels like a gift, the kind that makes people shed their jackets even though the wind still bites. Lily walked down the sidewalk, clutching a folder of documents, feeling the sun on the back of her neck through her dark hair. She hadn't tucked it behind her ear because she knew Carl liked it falling across her face. Head once said it made her look like a character from an old movie, though of course Head never actually seen one. She was 16 years, 3 months, and 4 days old. She was in 11th grade but had been attending prep courses at the county medical college for the past month, training to become a nurse. It was her mom's idea. You've always taken care of people. In kindergarten, you gave Leo a bandage for his knee. In 5th grade, you made Sonia cold compresses for her headaches. In 9th, you stayed up all night comforting Katia after her breakup. You know how to be there. Lily had laughed, but Shed signed up anyway. Not because she felt some grand calling, that sounded too dramatic for her, but because she liked feeling needed. Just like that. No strings attached. Today, Shed submitted her official enrollment paperwork. That meant the decision was made. She was, almost, a student. In 3 months, she'd be officially enrolled. Until then, summer break, which promised to be the best of her life. She stepped out of the college building, paused by the fountain. It wasn't running yet, the season hadn't started, and pulled out her phone. 3 messages. The first, from her mom. Well, did you submit? The second, from her friend Marina. We're at Bean & Co. In 20. Don't be late. The third, a voice note from Kyle. She put in her earbuds and tapped play. Hey, kitten. Just finished practice. Tomorrow's my day off. Wanna go to the lake? Bring a blanket, some chips, your ridiculous playlist. I just wanna lie there and watch you laugh. Do you even realize how long it's been? 2 whole days. That's a record. He paused, then added softly. I miss you. For real. Lily smiled. Tapped reply with voice. I miss you too. And yes, lake. But no salted chips. And the blanket, the one with blue stripes. She sent it and slipped her phone away. Didn't replay it. Let it stay exactly as it was. Alive, a little silly, real. She headed toward Bean & Co. On the way, she remembered yesterday's fight with her mom over the concert in the next town. You're submitting papers tomorrow. Her mom had yelled. And you want to sleep who knows where? It'll be 17 next month. Lily shot back. I'm not a kid. As long as you live under my roof, you are. They hadn't spoken all evening. But this morning, her mom brought her coffee in bed and said, fine. Go. Just make sure there's an adult with you. his mom knows I call him babe. Lily listened, sipped her cappuccino, felt everything inside her calm and light, as if the future wasn't scary at all, just the next day. When they left the cafe, it was almost 5. "Wanna go to the park?" Marina suggested. "Nah," Lily said. "I'm meeting Kyle at the rink." "Oh my God," Dasha rolled her eyes. "Are you still on kitten and ice rinks? You're not 16, you're 60. They parted ways at the bus stop. Lily walked. It was only 20 minutes home. She queued up her good mood playlist. Radiohead, Nautilus Pompilius, her favorite band, Poso. She strolled, humming under her breath, wondering whether to wear black or blue jeans tonight. She reached the intersection. The traffic light blinked yellow. She stopped at the crosswalk, waited for green. Pulled out one earbud, so she could hear if a car got too close. Her mom's rule: never cross the street with both earbuds in. Even if music is your whole world, green. She stepped forward. Then another step. On the third, she heard screeching brakes. She turned. Saw the Toyota skidding on the wet asphalt. Didn't have time to be scared. Didn't have time to think. Only, how strange. Why am I flying? And then, nothing. She didn't die. But she wasn't living, not the way she used to. Between those two states lay a gray zone. Quiet, cold, filled with clicks, beeps, and voices talking about her, but never to her. The first thing to return was hearing. Not all at once. Not clearly. But in fragments, like a radio tuned to a weak signal. At first, just noise. White, thick, like cotton in her ears. Then, individual sounds. Saturations 92 bp dropping prep epinephrine. She didn't understand the words. But she felt the rhythm, tense, jagged, like someone running and afraid to look back. Then, a voice. Male, calm, no panic. Is she breathing on her own? No. Only on vent. Then, trach. Now. She wanted to say, I'm here. I hear you. But her tongue wouldn't move. Her lips, neither. Only inside, a scream with no exit. The crash happened at 4:47 p.m. An ambulance arrived at 4:52. By 5:03, Lily was in the ICU at County General Hospital. Diagnosis: severe traumatic brain injury, cerebral contusion, C4-C5 cervical spine fracture, multiple chest contusions, lung laceration, internal bleeding. Glasgow Coma scale. 5. Prognosis: guarded. She was placed in a private bay. Walls, white, but not clean. Time-stained, cracked near the baseboards, scuffed by gurneys. Window, shuttered with blinds. Light, artificial, cold, like a basement. In the corner, an ICU ventilator. Black, screen flashing numbers. Beside it, a monitor. ECG, pulse, BP, O Saturday. Under the bed, a urine bag, half full, clear. On her arm, and foreline, taped down. On her abdomen, a dressing hiding the gastrostomy tube placed in surgery. On her neck, a tracheostomy at the door, unable to enter. A nurse stepped out, peeled off gloves, looked at him. "You're the father?" "Yes." "She's in a coma. But she hears. Talk to her. Even if she doesn't answer." He walked in, stopped at the head of the bed, saw his daughter's face, pale, bruised under the eyes, tube in her throat, four in her vein. He didn't recognize her. Not because she'd changed, but because she wasn't herself. Her laugh, her gaze, her habit of biting her lip when thinking, all gone. Only a body remained. Fragile, wired to machines. He took her hand. It was cold. "Lily," he said. "It's Dad." He fell silent. Didn't know what else to say. Then, softly, "You submitted your papers today. Remember? To the college." Kyle called. Said Hez waiting for you at the rink. We're all waiting. He sat for 2 hours. Then left, not because he was tired, but because Mom was calling. "How is she?" He couldn't say. "She's not her." So he said, "She's alive." On day 2, first signs of response. Not movement, not speech, but pupils. When Nurse Laner, tall, short hair, freckled hands, shone a penlight, the pupil constricted. "She's reacting. Brainstem's intact," the doctor nodded. "Good sign." Laner stayed. She didn't just perform tasks, she spoke. "I'm cleaning your trach now, Lily. It'll feel cool." She removed the inner cannula, wiped the stoma site with antiseptic, inserted a new one. "You're doing great." Then, the G-tube. "Feeding time. It's warm. Don't worry." She connected the syringe, slowly depressed the plunger. 120 milliliters. Another dose in 3 hours. Then, her lips. She took a damp cotton pad, gently wiped Lily's dry, chapped lips. "Try to part your lips just a little," she said softly. "It'll help you breathe through your mouth while you adjust to the tube." Lily couldn't obey. But somewhere inside, she tried. And that was enough. Mum came on the morning of day 3. She brought fresh pajamas, even though Lily wore disposables. Brought her favorite lavender hand cream. Brought a photo. Lily and her at the beach, 2 years ago. She set it on the bedside table, next to the monitor. "Look how tan you were," she said. "Remember? You said, 'Mom, I want to live like this forever, sun and sea.'" She took Lily's hand, rubbed in the cream. "I remember." She didn't cry, but her fingers trembled. On day 4, the first vent wean attempt. Just 5 minutes. The doctor watched the monitor. Spontaneous breaths? No. Rates 4. Reconnect. Lily felt the air stop. For a second, panic. Then relief when the vent hissed back on. She didn't understand what was happening, but her body knew. Without the machine, no breath. On day 5, Dad brought her earbuds. Not new ones. The old pair she used in school. He plugged them into his phone, played her good mood playlist. "Listen," he said. "It's your Radiohead." He placed the buds against her ear. She didn't hear the music, too loud was the vent. But she felt the vibration. clock, but by the drip of fluids, by dressing changes, by the way a nurse gently adjusted a pillow beneath a patient's back to prevent pressure sores, and where every morning began not with hope, but with the simple, stubborn decision. Today, we'll do what we can. No more, no less. The room they moved her into was small but bright. A large window looked out onto an inner courtyard where old birch trees grew, their branches brushing the sill, and on windy days it seemed as though the trees were trying to peer inside, checking to see if everyone was all right with those who lay here, suspended between life and long waiting. The walls were painted pale green, not the sickly shade from the ICU, but a soft, almost minty tone that didn't strain the eyes but rather soothed them, as if the paint itself understood that people here were tired not just in body, but in soul. Beside the bed stood a nightstand holding a glass of water, a bottle of antiseptic, a feeding log, nutrition. 120 milliliters at 9 o'clock, 120 milliliters at 12 o'clock, and a photograph. Lily with her parents at their lakeside cabin 2 summers ago, back when she didn't know what a gastrostomy tube was, and the word tracheostomy only reminded her of biology class. Her parents agreed to take shifts. Mom from morning until evening, Dad from evening until morning. It wasn't an easy decision, not because they didn't want to be together, but because they understood. If both stayed around the clock, they'd break. Mom worked as an accountant, and her boss, upon hearing what happened, said, "Take unpaid leave, as long as you need." Dad, an engineer at the plant, arranged a rotating schedule. 3 days on, 3 days in the hospital. They didn't complain. Didn't confess how scared they were to each other. They simply did what needed to be done. The first weeks in Palliative passed in a strange, almost surreal silence, broken only by stark voices, the rustle of sheets, and the low hum of the ventilator, which now stood not as a symbol of struggle, but as part of the room's furniture, like a radio left on for company. Lily slowly returned to herself, not all at once, not in a leap, but gradually, like someone emerging from fog and only now beginning to make out the world's outlines. She started noticing she could feel more. Not just pain or cold, but the warmth of her mother's hand stroking her hair, not just the smell of antiseptic, but the faint aroma of coffee Mom sometimes drank while sitting by the window, watching the birches, not just the sound of the vent, but the quiet voice of the elderly woman in the next bed, a cancer patient, who read Akhmetova aloud every morning, even if no one listened. One morning, when sunlight fell especially brightly across the floor, Nurse Lena entered with her tray. Syringe of formula, cotton pads, antiseptic, and a small jar of petroleum jelly. She always came at the same time, 8:30 a.m., and always began the same way. "Good morning, Lily. How'd you sleep?" She knew there'd be no answer, but she spoke as if Lily might open her eyes any second and say, "Fine, thanks." Then she'd carefully clean the skin around the trach, check for redness, replace the inner cannula, and only then move to the G-tube. Feeding time now. It's warm, like tea. She'd attach the syringe, slowly depress the plunger, watching to ensure the formula flowed without jerks. Too fast could cause vomiting or discomfort. And then, the lips. This was her ritual. She'd take a damp cotton pad, gently wipe Lily's dry, cracked lips, then apply a thin layer of petroleum jelly, saying, "Try to part your lips just a little, Lily. It'll help you breathe through your mouth while you adjust to the tube." And though Lily couldn't obey, somewhere deep inside, where a spark of awareness still glowed, she tried, and that attempt, that barely perceptible neural impulse no machine could register but which Lena somehow felt, became her sign. She's here. She's fighting. 6 weeks passed. get it," he whispered. "You want to speak." She blinked. Yes. That moment changed everything. Not outwardly. Not overnight. But inside, something shifted. As if the girl who'd crossed the street with earbuds finally found her way back, not to her old life, but to herself. The next day, Dad brought a private speech therapist, not from the hospital, but one recommended by a coworker. A man in his 30s, with a musical note tattooed on his wrist and a calm voice that didn't sound clinical but like ordinary conversation. "We won't rush," he said, sitting beside her. "Well, just relearn how to feel your body." He started simply. "Imagine there's a candy in your mouth. Where is it?" She couldn't answer. But inside, she pictured it. "Now, your tongue. Where does it want to go?" She tried. It didn't work. But the therapist smiled. "Perfect. You tried. That's already a win." A month later, first sounds. Not words. Not letters. Just air passing through her throat when the speaking valve was placed on her trach for 10 minutes. Poor Dad froze. "Lily?" Par, he didn't cry out. Didn't hug her. Just said, "I'm here." From that day, everything changed, not in schedules or feed volumes, but inside. The room now held expectation. Her parents spoke more freely, even when she didn't respond. Nurse Lena, once cautious in her requests, now confidently asked, "Lily, try saying yes, repeat after me." Mom, let's just breathe out together, and their responses were rare, often breaking into coughs or fatigue. Each one became a small miracle, not for doctors or protocols, but for those who remembered how she laughed at silly memes, argued with Mom about dresses, and whispered to Kyle on the phone, "You're my kitten." But with voice came memory, not all at once, but in fragments, like faded photographs still recognizable. One night, as Dad dozed in the armchair and the vent hissed softly in the corner, she suddenly remembered. Kyle hadn't visited in a long time. Not a week. Not 2. A month. She didn't know exactly. Time in the room had lost shape, but she remembered his last message. "I miss you. For real." And then, nothing. The next morning, she blinked 3 times in a row. "Hurts." "Where does it hurt?" Mom asked. Lily closed her eyes. Then, one blink. "You want to say something?" She nodded as best she could. "Kyle?" Mom asked softly. Lily blinked. "Yes." Mom fell silent. Then said, "He called. A month ago. Said he couldn't do it anymore." Lily didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just turned toward the wall. And for the first time ever, didn't respond to a single question. That day became a turning point. Not because she lost a boyfriend, such stories are countless, but because she realized, for the first time, the world had kept going without her. Her friends went to concerts. Kyle was probably kissing someone else. Even school had ended, without her, without graduation, without the final bell. She remained here, in this world of 4 lines, dressings, and voice exercises, while her old life slipped away like water through fingers. And now, when she reached for it, all that remained was loss. Quiet, deep, like a wound that doesn't bleed but aches in running weather. Yet in that Is this me? Yes, the therapist said. That's you. She looked out the window at the birches, now in full leaf, and thought for the first time. Maybe I don't need to go back. Maybe I need to build something new. Here, now, with this voice, these scars, this pain. 2 more months passed. The speaking valve was worn 6 hours a day. G-tube feeds were reduced to 60 milliliters. She ate the rest herself. First yogurt, then oatmeal, then soup Mom made specially, smooth, mild, but full of love. One day, when she drank a full glass of water without choking, Dad quietly said, "You've got this." She looked at him and, for the first time since the crash, smiled. Not broadly, not perfectly, but the way only someone who's walked through darkness and knows the price of light can smile. The voice didn't return all at once. It didn't burst in like in movies, where a silent hero suddenly speaks a full sentence brimming with wisdom and pain. No, the voice returned drop by drop, like water from a tap long unused. First a rusty groan, then a thin trickle, barely audible, and only months later a true sound. Warm, slightly raspy, but hers, familiar, as if it had been waiting deep inside, behind a wall of fear and exhaustion, unsure when it was safe to come out. The first time they placed the speaking valve on her trach, Lily felt not joy, but fear. Fear that air, which had gone straight to her lungs through a tube, would now have to parse through her throat, over vocal cords that had forgotten how to sound, and escape as something alive, something that could be heard. She lay tense as the speech therapist carefully secured the valve, checked the seal, instructed. "Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, don't strain," she tried. Air parsed. A sound escaped her throat, not a word, not a letter, but something between a sigh and a moan, raspy, nearly silent, but real. Dad, sitting nearby, froze. "Lily?" She looked at him. Tried again. "Par, did you say Dad?" She blinked. Yes. He didn't cry. Didn't embrace her. Just took her hand and pressed it to his lips, as if afraid the sound would vanish if he moved. From that day, everything changed, not in procedure schedules or feeding volumes, but inside. The room now held anticipation. Her parents spoke more openly, even when she didn't reply. Nurse Lena, once careful with her requests, now boldly asked, "Lily, try saying yes, repeat after me." Mom, let's just breathe out together, and though answers were rare, often breaking into coughs or fatigue, each one became a small miracle, not for doctors or protocols, but for those who remembered how she laughed at silly memes, argued with Mom about dresses, and whispered to Kyle on the phone, "You're my kitten." But with voice came memory, not all at once, but in fragments, like old photographs, faded but still recognizable. One night, as Dad dozed in the armchair and the vent hissed softly in the corner, she suddenly remembered. Kyle hadn't visited in a long time. Not a week. Not 2. A month. She didn't know exactly. Time in the room had lost shape, but she remembered his last message. "I miss you. For real." And then, nothing. The next morning, she blinked 3 times in a row. "Hurts." "Where does it hurt?" Mom asked. Lily closed her eyes. Then, one blink. "You want to say something?" She nodded as best she could. "Kyle?" Mom asked softly. Lily blinked. "Yes." Mom fell silent. Then said, "He called. A month ago. Said he couldn't do it anymore." Lily didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just turned toward the wall. And for the first time ever, didn't respond to a single question. That day became a turning point. Not because she lost a boyfriend, such stories are countless, but because she realized, for the first time, the world had kept going without her. Her friends went to concerts. Kyle was probably kissing someone else. Even school had ended, without her, without graduation, without the final bell. She remained here, in this world of 4 lines, dressings, and voice exercises, while her old life slipped away like water through fingers. And now, when she reached for it, all that remained was loss. Quiet, deep, like a wound that doesn't bleed but aches in rainy weather. Yet in that pain, in that loneliness, a new resolve was born. One morning, when the speech therapist asked her to repeat Lily, she didn't just say the name. She spoke it clearly, with intonation, with a slight question in her voice, as if asking, "Is this me?" "Yes," the therapist said. "That's you." She looked out the window at the birches, now in full leaf, and thought for the first time, maybe I don't need to go back. Maybe I need to build something new, here, now, with this voice, these scars, this pain. 2 more months passed. The speaking valve was worn 6 hours a day. G-tube feeds were reduced to 60 milliliters. She ate the rest herself. First yogurt, then oatmeal, then soup mom made specially, smooth, mild, but full of love. One day, when she drank a full glass of water without choking, Dad quietly said, "You've got this." She looked at him and, for the first time since the crash, smiled. Not broadly, not perfectly, but the way only someone who's walked through darkness and knows the price of light can smile. Home was different, not because they'd renovated it, though they had. Removed the front step, installed grab bars in the bathroom, bought an adjustable bed, but because she herself was different. And now everything that had once felt familiar seemed foreign, as if Shed returned not to her own nest, but to the house where her shadow once lived. The air smelled wrong, not of perfume or morning coffee, but of a faint, almost imperceptible trace of antiseptic that must have soaked into her skin over those months and now refused to leave. The walls were the same, the wallpaper unchanged, even her childhood stuffed dog sat on the shelf, but everything sounded different. Footsteps echoed too loudly, her parents' voices seemed too sharp, and silence felt too deep, as if the house itself feared startling this fragile, barely alive girl who'd come back but hadn't yet decided to stay. The first weeks after discharge passed in a strange, almost sacred routine. Mornings began with G-tube care, Mom gently removing the dressing, inspecting the skin around the tube, cleaning with antiseptic, attaching the syringe of formula, then breakfast, which Lily now ate herself, slowly, with pauses to avoid choking, then physical therapy, Dad helping her stand, lean on her cane, take 3 steps to the door, then 5, then all the way to the window afternoons, speech therapy via video call, articulation drills, breathing exercises, swallowing practice evenings, a short walk to the bench in the courtyard, where Shed sit, watch children playing in the sandbox, and feel a quiet, almost painful ache. Not envy, not sadness, but longing for a future she hadn't lost yet but no longer knew how to build. Her parents tried to be invisible, not out of indifference, but out of fear of smothering her, of turning home into another hospital ward. But it was impossible. Every glance, every gesture, every silence said, "We're afraid. We're afraid you'll slip away again." Mom stopped sleeping through the night, not from exhaustion, but because every 2 hours Shed rise to check if Lily was breathing, if her eyes hadn't rolled back, if vomiting hadn't started. Dad, usually reserved, now repeated endlessly, "You're doing great. You've got this. We're so proud of you." She knew he wasn't just speaking to her, he was saying it to himself, to convince himself they hadn't fought all those months for nothing. One day, 3 weeks after coming home, something unexpected happened. Lily ate a whole apple. Not puree. Not juice. A real apple. Green, crisp, tart. She stared at it like a relic, then took a small bite, chewed, swallowed. Then another. And another. When she reached the core, she looked up at Mom and said, "I want another." Mom cried, not from joy, but from relief. As if only now, seeing her daughter eat an apple, did she truly believe. She's staying. But the real test came with her first solo outing. It happened by accident. Mom went to the store, Dad to work, and Lily, waking alone, felt she couldn't stay inside these four walls another minute. She dressed herself, buttoning her shirt with trembling fingers, lacing her sneakers, grabbing her cane, and stepped outside. The courtyard was quiet. Summer was ending, leaves turning gold, the air cool but not cold. She walked to the bench, sat, closed her eyes, and simply breathed, not through a tube, not under machine control, but freely, deeply, as a feeling for the first time that the air belonged to her. Passers-by glanced her way, not out of curiosity, but cautious empathy. A thin girl with a cane, a scar on her neck, eyes looking not ahead but inward. She didn't notice. She just sat and thought. I'm here. I'm home. And I'm not alone. That evening, when her parents returned, they didn't scold her for going out alone. Dad only said, "You could have fallen." "But I didn't," she replied. And in that brief exchange lay everything. Fear, trust, and the first fragile attempt at living independently. 2 more months passed. The G-tube wasn't removed yet. It was too soon, but feeds were reduced to once daily, at bedtime. Lily started visiting the library, first with Mom, then alone. She enrolled in online psychology courses, not because she had decided to become a specialist, but because she wanted to understand. How do people survive after losing themselves? One day, flipping through a textbook, she found a line. "Trauma doesn't make you stronger. It makes you different." And the task I sent you to return to who you are, but to learn to live with who you've become. She read it 10 times, then copied it into her notebook, and placed it beside the photo of her and her parents at the lake, not as a reminder of the past, but as a sign. I was there. Now I'm here. And this, too, is me. 18 months after the day she crossed the street with earbuds in, wondering whether to wear black or blue jeans, Lily turned 18. She was in her second year at the community college nursing program, walked with a cane shed painted with blue stripes, the same as the blanket Kyle once dreamed of, and started each morning not with G-tube feeds, removed 6 months ago, but with coffee she brewed slowly, deliberately, as if it were a ritual rather than a habit. She no longer listened to her good mood playlist. Now she played Radiohead, Still, Nautilus Pompilius, for the raw truth in Brodska's words, and one song Shed recorded herself on an old voice memo Dad gave her for her birthday. I don't know why this happened, but I'm here, and I'm not leaving. She didn't post it online, didn't sing it on stage. She just played it on hard nights, as proof. You made it through that. You'll make it through this. Life wasn't happy in the fairy tale sense. It was real. There were days when her head pounded so fiercely she thought her skull might crack. Nights when her right side went numb, and she lay frozen, terrified it was the start of another episode. Moments when classmates glanced at the scar on her neck and looked away, unsure what to say. But there were other days. When she dressed a patient's gown for the first time and heard, "Thank you, honey, you're so gentle," when Mom finally slept through the night without checking on her. when Dad brought home a scruffy terrier pup named Bob, because he's a mess, but sweet, and when she finally told herself, I don't want to be who I was before the crash. I want to be who I am after. And then, Kyle. He appeared as suddenly as had vanished. One autumn afternoon, leaves thick on the ground, wood smoke in the air, she saw him outside her apartment building. He stood by the courtyard bench in the jacket she remembered, hands shoved deep in his pockets, as if afraid to move. Head lost weight. His hair was shorter. His eyes held not the confidence of a football player, but the quiet uncertainty of someone who didn't know if he had the right to be here. Hey, he said. Hey, she replied. They stood in silence. I didn't know what to say back then. So I left. I know, she said. I'm sorry. I'm not mad. How are you? Living. He nodded. Then softly. You're beautiful. She smiled, not bitterly, not sadly, just simply. Thanks. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't ask to come back. He just stood there, memorizing her, not the girl she'd been, but the woman she'd become. Then he pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Your voice. From when you were 15. I kept it. She took it. Didn't plug it in. Just slipped it into her coat pocket. Thank you. But that's not my voice anymore. He nodded. I get it. They stood a moment longer. Good luck, Lily. You too, Kyle. He walked away. She didn't watch him go. Just lifted her face to the sky, breathed in the crisp air, and thought. This isn't an ending. It's freedom. Now, lying in her room, listening to Bob snore at her feet while leaves rustle outside, she knows. She didn't survive. She didn't become stronger. She simply kept living, not despite it all, but with it all. Fear, pain, loss, love, scars, a cane, a voice that's imperfect but true. And that is enough. This story is inspired by real experiences. Names, places, and details have been changed to protect privacy. At Children Who Changed How We Live, we believe that the deepest transformations often begin in silence, in hospital rooms, in whispered words, in the quiet courage of ordinary families who refuse to let go. This is not a story about miracles. It's about what happens after the silence fades when the world moves on, but one girl's journey has only just begun. Listen gently. Lily's story is one of thousands. Not every child walks again. Not every voice returns. But every single one changes how we live, if we choose to listen. At our channel, we honor these quiet transformations. No RE voices. No dramatization. Just real stories, told with reverence. If this moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear. You're not alone, and your presence matters. With gratitude, Children Who Changed How We Live PS. All names and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. This story